Something was said by Pope Francis that shook the corridors of the Vatican. A message so surprising that many believe it to be the most serious warning of recent times. If you think you already know all the prophecies and secrets of the Church, this revelation might shake your convictions. Imagine a warning that spans centuries, from the enigmatic events of Fatima to the present. Now this warning echoes with a new and unexpected urgency. Before we begin, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this. Here, we explore impactful revelations, prophetic messages, and events that can change the way we see the world and spirituality. Activate the bell to receive notifications and stay updated with new posts. If this topic resonates with you, leave a like and share this video with more people. Now get ready for a message that could transform your vision of the future. Let's begin. What the Pope said cannot simply be ignored. Words laden with impressive gravity made millions around the world wonder. Are we really on the brink of something greater than we can imagine? During a statement marked by an unusual emotion, Francisco shared a disturbing vision. He described an apparition of Mary like never before reported. Her heart, surrounded by thorns, represented more than a metaphor for human suffering. It was an undeniable sign that the world had reached a dangerous threshold. With a rare expression of urgency, he made an appeal. Listen before it's too late. But what does that mean? Why is this message different from the previous ones? What makes this moment unique in history? The warning resonates amid a backdrop of global uncertainties. The Pope's words bring a direct connection to the mysteries of Fatima and the secrets that, for more than a century, have intrigued scholars and the faithful. Has the time finally run out? This revelation is not directed only at the religious, but at everyone who seeks answers in a world marked by chaos. Those who understand this message may have the opportunity to prepare for something that could redefine the course of humanity. To understand the true magnitude of this warning, it is necessary to revisit the events that changed the spiritual perception of the 20th century. In 1917, in a small Portuguese village, 3 peasant children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, witnessed something that still challenges human understanding to this day. What they saw may be directly linked to the current warning. The words passed down through the centuries were not mere expressions of faith or comfort. They were direct warnings about a future that few dared to imagine. Distressing visions of incalculable suffering, premonitions of devastating wars, and an uncompromising appeal for Russia to be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. What would happen if this call were ignored? The consequences would be more severe than anyone could foresee. History, relentless in its course, recorded the unfolding of these prophecies. World War II, the rise of totalitarian regimes, and the spread of ideologies that drove millions away from faith. All of this was foretold in the messages of Fatima. But why do these events, which occurred more than a century ago, still resonate so strongly? The answer is simple. These warnings were never intended only for that time. They transcend the barriers of time, echoing through different generations, serving as a reminder that whenever humanity strays from the spiritual path, the consequences are inevitable. Fatima is not just a pilgrimage site. Its sanctuary, visited by millions annually, is a living proof that the divine and the earthly are deeply connected. During the papacy of John Paul II, these revelations gained notoriety once again. In 1981, an assassination attempt almost took his life, an event that was later associated with the third secret of Fatima. He himself acknowledged that his survival was not a coincidence, but a miracle granted by the Virgin Mary. Now, under Francisco's leadership, these messages take on a new sense of urgency. The world faces different challenges, but the pattern repeats. A growing moral collapse, ideological conflicts that divide nations, and an unprecedented spiritual crisis. The warning is clear, but will humanity listen this time? Divine warnings never appear without purpose. They appear in critical moments, when great transformations are about to happen. The current context, filled with instability, threat, and disbelief, precisely reflects the conditions that preceded tragic events in the past. The big question is, will we be able to recognize the signs before it's too late? Pope Francis, by bringing these prophecies to light once again, is not merely repeating an old message. He is making an appeal with an unusual weight, a call to reflection and action. During a powerful statement, his words carried a solemn and unmistakable tone. Listen while there's still time. The silence that followed was as powerful as the message itself. It was not just a call to prayer or a reflection on faith. It was a decisive warning, a milestone that would define the course of the coming years. Pope Francis brought to the world a message laden with a weight similar to the warnings of Fatima, but with even clearer signs of the challenges to come. According to his words, the Virgin Mary appeared enveloped in white, a symbol of purity, but her countenance reflected an indescribable sadness. In her hands, a luminous heart surrounded by thorns, the manifestation of the suffering caused by humanity. It was not an ordinary vision. The Pope, known for his deep Marian devotion, received this revelation as an urgent call to share a warning that could not be softened. The apparition came during a critical period, marked by a growing detachment from spirituality, intensified conflicts, and an accelerated erosion of moral values. Francisco emphasized that Mary's message was not just a repetition of old warnings, but an urgent reinforcement. The time for changes is running out. Why did this revelation come now? The answer, according to the Pope, lay in the very celestial warning itself. If humanity does not take a new direction, it will face an era of darkness that cannot be contained by material solutions. He described images that appeared before his eyes: large-scale destruction, increasing violence, and a society plunged into confusion. But what troubled me the most was the mention of a silent danger, an invisible illness, something that threatens both the body and the soul. Francisco avoided explicit details, but his words suggested that this affliction transcends the physical. Could it be moral corruption, spiritual detachment, or an unknown threat? In a world where health and faith are intertwined in unexpected ways, this warning resonates as an alert that the challenges of the future may be deeper than we imagine. In light of this, the Pope's response was direct. The only way out is a spiritual rebirth. He urged the faithful to intensify their prayers, to resume the sacraments with devotion, and to perform acts of reparation for the sins of the world. In his voice, a mixture of anguish and hope. Humanity still has time, but the window is closing rapidly. Your message was not a judgment, but a plea full of compassion. The fate of humanity is not yet sealed, but it depends on the choices made now. The message conveyed by Pope Francis was not a simple reminder of faith, but a warning laden with consequences. The vision he described of the Virgin Mary was not a common manifestation. His account carried a spiritual weight that resonated with everyone who heard it. The details of this apparition generated a profound unease. Mary appeared with a resplendent white mantle, a symbol of peace and purity, but her face was marked by an overwhelming sadness. It was not a common sadness, but an expression of silent pain, reflecting the critical state of humanity. In her hands, she carried a luminous heart, surrounded by thorns. This image, so familiar to the devotees of the Immaculate Heart, this time carried a more intense meaning. The thorns represented the incessant offenses against God, the sins that accumulate without repentance, the spiritual indifference that spreads throughout the world. The Pope described that, upon witnessing this vision, he felt an almost unbearable pressure on his soul. Each word spoken by Mary carried an ancestral weight, an echo of past warnings, now reinforced with an urgency that could not be ignored. Maria was not there to console, but to warn. Her request was clear. Without conversion, without true repentance, the future will bring inescapable tribulations. During the vision, the Pope saw disturbing scenes, natural disasters in rapid succession, as if they were signs of something even greater. The scene revealed a direct connection between human choices and the responses of creation itself. The harmony between the spiritual and physical worlds was compromised, and the consequences were inevitable. Another striking detail was the silence that accompanied the appearance. An absolute silence, dense, laden with expectation. The presence of the Virgin Mary was not just a warning, but a waiting. The world needed to give an answer, needed to decide its path before it was too late. The vision also revealed something even more unsettling. Crowds were walking towards a dense shadow, a darkness that spread and consumed entire cities. This was not just a physical darkness, but a reflection of the spiritual crisis that intensified with each passing day. A world immersed in the reckless pursuit of power and pleasure, while faith and morality were set aside. Faced with this vision, the Pope felt an uncontrollable urge to pray. The presence of Mary demanded it. She was not asking for mere devotion, but for a real spiritual combat against the invisible forces that were advancing. Her request was straightforward: to pray the Rosary daily as a shield against the approaching darkness. The revelation was not just a warning, but a call to action. The struggle was not against something physical, but against what hides in the hearts and souls of humanity. The Rosary, often seen as a simple practice, was presented as a fundamental weapon for the times to come. At the end of his account, Pope Francis made a firm appeal. If humanity does not heed the call now, it may be too late. His words carried undeniable weight. It was not just a warning for Catholics, but for everyone who still recognizes spirituality as an essential pillar. The vision he described not only reinforced the prophecies of Fatima, but also brought new elements that reflect current challenges. Although severe, the message of the Virgin Mary still carried compassion. Time is short, but hope has not been extinguished. The possibility of transformation still exists, as long as the right choices are made now. Each detail recounted by the Pope seemed carefully chosen to convey the gravity of the moment. The heart surrounded by thorns, the sadness in Mary's eyes, and the spreading darkness were not mere metaphors. They represented concrete warnings about the condition of humanity. The heart wrapped in thorns symbolized the weight of accumulated sins. Francisco emphasized that these thorns are marks of the actions that drive the world away from faith. The sadness on Maria's face, in turn, did not express despair, but concern for those who can still be saved. The most disturbing point of the vision was the growing darkness. The Pope did not describe it as an abstract concept, but as a real force that advanced as humanity distanced itself from spirituality. This shadow did not appear suddenly. It feeds on excessive materialism, indifference, and the relentless pursuit of power. With each misguided choice, she grows, becoming a reflection of what the world has become. The Pope's warning was clear. Change is still possible, but time is running out. The darkness that advances upon humanity did not arise from a single event. It is the result of small moral concessions, of a culture that values immediate gratification over spiritual growth. Pope Francis warned that this shadow can only be dispelled by the light of faith, prayer, and sincere repentance. The call to action is immediate. It is not a distant threat or something reserved for the future. The need for change is now. Francisco also mentioned visions of natural disasters and social crises in rapid succession, indicating that these disturbances are not just physical, but reflections of a deep spiritual disturbance. The world is interconnected in ways that go beyond what is visible. Spiritual choices are reflected in everyday reality, shaping events and consequences. The Pope emphasized that the only way to avoid the darkest scenarios is the renewal of faith. Prayer, especially the Rosary, should not be seen merely as a ritual, but as a spiritual weapon to strengthen hope and restore balance. Among the warnings conveyed by Francisco, one of the most unsettling aspects was the mention of a silent disease. He warned that this threat is not limited to the body, but reaches the soul. Although not detailing its origin, he made it clear that its implications are profound and far-reaching. The global impact of recent health crises has demonstrated how an invisible threat can completely alter the course of humanity. However, what the Pope described seems to transcend the physical plane. This disease does not only attack the body, but the essence of spiritual life. The mentioned ailment symbolizes the gradual distancing from faith, a subtle process that begins with the loss of spiritual identity, the dissolution of the sense of community, indifference to morality, and the growing relativism create fertile ground for this disease to thrive. Gradually, society becomes insensitive to sin, complacent with corruption, and increasingly distant from the divine purpose. Francisco's warning is not just a notice, but a call to spiritual restoration. The time to act is running out. This spiritual disease does not manifest abruptly, like a political crisis or a natural disaster. It slowly infiltrates routines, relationships, and individual and collective choices. It arises in the relentless pursuit of success, wealth, and momentary pleasure, while spiritual reflection and faith are set aside. Modern society, saturated with distractions and stimuli, has become fertile ground for this spiritual decay. Pope Francis warned that this corrosion does not only affect individuals, but entire communities. When spiritual values are replaced by materialistic interests, social cohesion weakens, paving the way for feelings of disorientation and despair. Faith, which should be a foundation to face challenges, weakens. And it is in this void that the darkness, mentioned by Francisco, spreads with even greater intensity. The only way to contain this threat is through a profound renewal of spirituality. The Pope highlighted prayer, especially the Rosary, as a defense against this invisible corrosion. Moreover, he emphasized the importance of confession and the sacraments as means of purification and strengthening of the soul. The danger of this silent disease lies in the fact that, unlike evident catastrophes, its damages are only perceived when they have already caused irreversible impact. Its gradual progression allows it to go unnoticed until the transformation of society is complete. To prevent its expansion, a collective commitment to prayer and the restoration of faith is necessary. The Pope's warning was not just a notice, but a call to action, an opportunity to correct the course before it is too late. The message conveyed by Francisco quickly brought to mind ancient prophecies that shaped the history of the Church. Among them, the apparitions of Fatima in 1917 remain one of the most significant events in the Catholic faith. During these apparitions, 3 humble children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, witnessed visions that for many seemed impossible. The similarity between the warnings of the past and the recent revelation by the Pope is undeniable, reinforcing the continuity of divine alerts throughout the ages. The messages transmitted in Fatima carried urgent warnings about the need for prayer and penance. Among them, the 3 secrets of Fatima revealed predictions that shaped history: World War II, the spread of communism, and the persecution of the Church. These prophecies were not mere threats. They came true, impacting generations. What makes Pope Francis's revelation so significant is its direct connection to these past warnings. Just as Mary warned about the risk of wars and the decline of faith, Francis described a spiritual darkness that threatens to engulf the modern world. This shadow does not arise only through visible violence, but through moral degradation and the distancing from spirituality. The suffering of the Church and the persecution of the faithful, mentioned in Fatima, find resonance in the Pope's vision, who highlighted a silent disease capable of weakening both body and soul. The Church is facing challenging times. The loss of faithful, ideological conflicts, and spiritual indifference are signs of a period of trial. The warning about this silent disease reflects the crises that the world and faith are currently facing. Moreover, the Pope's visions included images of natural disasters and political instability, recalling the first 2 secrets of Fatima. The Second World War, foretold by Mary, was preceded by a period of distancing from God. Today, we see a global scenario of tensions, increasing conflicts, and environmental challenges that threaten humanity. The connection between current events and Francis's warning is evident. Another notable similarity with Fatima is the call to prayer, especially the Rosary. The Virgin Mary emphasized this practice as a spiritual shield against darkness. Francisco reinforced this appeal, reminding that the rosary is not just a tradition, but a powerful weapon against the darkness revealed in his vision. The third secret of Fatima, kept hidden for decades and revealed in 2000, spoke of a bishop dressed in white facing persecutions. Many believe that this vision referred to the assassination attempt on John Paul II in 1981, an event he associated with Mary's protection. The warnings are repeating. The lessons of 1917 return so that this time, humanity can give the answer it has not yet given.